Hello, everyone, and welcome to Data Analytics Chat, where we look to explore the exciting world of data analytics. We will look into the the challenges, the evolving landscape that this market is bringing. And today we're going to look at the importance of data transformation in business. I guess important topic, especially with all the new advancements in data analytics, companies modernising data infrastructures, and then also businesses be looking to become more data driven. I guess so. It's a strategic requirement for organisations in order to gain that significant competitive advantage. So I'm delighted to welcome special guest Roberto Ramirez, who has a great experience in the transformation space for different businesses across different countries. So Roberto, welcome. And do you want to give yourself a brief introduction?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Roberto Ramirez. I've been actually working in transformation for some years now in many countries and multiple industries, banking for the most part, then distribution, and now in the medical devices and clinical analytics sector. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, let's get the show going.
Yeah, brilliant. So I've read some interesting facts that 40% of all technology spending is directed towards digital transformation, which I thought was quite a massive number. And then the other fact I found interesting was that worldwide spending on data transformation is going to reach like $3.4 trillion by 2026. So it shows how important this is for businesses and their success.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, throughout my career, the things that I've seen is that a lot of companies have put a significant amount of efforts in transforming themselves in their processes, in their technologies, but not that many take a moment to think about how much data plays a role into all that transformation. And I think this is something that definitely needs to be taken into account, because I think that in a way is the cherry on the pie when you actually have deployed a significant amount of transformation to improve and become leaner. The data has to accompany that effort to make it as successful as possible. So yeah, that's a big difference for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. But yeah, big numbers, I thought. So let's kick things off with the first question. So I guess, from your perspective, what is a data transformation and why is it essential for businesses to link to their company strategy?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, in my view, transformation is the gap that exists between what a company wants to achieve as a strategy and what the operational setup is at the moment. So whatever gaps there exist between the two of them, that is where the transformation comes in. And as I was saying, one thing, a very important thing, of course, is to close the gaps through operations, through technology improvements, setting state-of-the-art processes, potentially outsourcing some of these key processes into a more leaner structure. But of course, there is a significant component, which is the data transformation, which means that the data setup of a company, the way it consumes data, the way it uses the data, the way it transfers data, has to accompany or has to be running parallel to that transformation from the operations and technology perspective. Otherwise, it's like putting diesel into a gasoline car. Sometimes if you are not aligning those two efforts, you may not be running as fast as you would have liked, and there may be a lot of overwrite and overwork and wastage and so on and so forth. So just as important as transforming the bolts and nuts of a company, it's as important as transforming the data setup, the looking at the data dictionary, what are the data elements that are going to be consumed for what matter, for which processes, in what formats, and then with what purpose. So yeah, absolutely critical piece of the transformation journey.
Yeah, no, and I think obviously a lot of it is to obviously improve productivity or optimize the costs within a business. So I mean, obviously that tends to be driven from sort of the senior C-level stakeholders. So how can businesses, especially within data, obviously, I guess C-level people may not be as sort of technology focused. So how can businesses effectively involve stakeholders in data transformation processes, and what benefits does this bring with collaboration?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So there is a significant component when it comes to the data transformation, which is the cultural component. So to try to create awareness of how critical the data element is and how is it being consumed. I think in general terms, companies are sitting in loads of data, but they're unable sometimes to determine which is good data and which one is not so good, or which sets of data derive to the right facts and which ones are actually misleading. So there has to be a significant amount of effort in creating that awareness, that data-driven culture in organizations, so that we know which data to consume and for what purpose, and then in what format. And for that matter, I mean, you may have heard in the past, well, recently, basically, that among the C level of an organization, there is the chief data officer, which was a position that was not there in the past, and there and yeah, it encompasses experts from very specific areas that have a direct line to data management and and proper data consumption, because as you said, the idea is to make the processes much leaner and eliminate the wastage as much as possible, especially nowadays where competition and competitiveness is even more important than ever.
Yeah, definitely. And I've obviously heard lots, obviously, like businesses having, like, they, I guess, co-design it together, like the tech staff members and the business, to really embed them together. So both have got the understanding of where, I guess, where they're heading to. Um, I mean, how do you communicate the value of data transformation for people like they may not have this technical background?
I mean, I'm going to give you a real example, a personal example. For example, I mean, nowadays ESG is becoming more important every day. And this is the type of data, environmental, social governance data, is sometimes not as not as reachable as other types of data like the financial or risk data or whatever have you. So it is, like I said, it's very important to have the link between the different departments and functions of an organization and the objectives to the data set, so that it becomes easier and linear to consume and find and construct the right, let's say, data, maybe you want to call it data lakes or data suites, or data storage, whatever have you, so that it is relatable to not only the people in operations or finance, but other areas of the organization that are becoming much more public, if I may, and that should have access to data in a very agile and lean way, and without having to go through the burden of harmonizing or transforming or normalizing that data for consumption and use.
So is
So
that
yeah.
what it's like, you simplifying terms for people within the business?
Yeah,
Yeah,
to a
yeah.
certain extent, and also not only simplify, but like I said, harmonize. Like, for example, to give you an
Mm,
example, when I was in my banking days, for a very specific or a critical data element, as we used to call them, there would be a different perception between people from finance and people from risk, for example. I
yeah,
mean, in terms of revenues, people from finance would call, revenues would include pieces of information that would not necessarily fall into the same category for risk people, for example, because for risk people, I mean, if there are those strings of revenue, that means that the portfolio may be deteriorating, whereas in the case of the commercial guys or the finance guys, that means a higher income. So again, I think there has to be making it easy for people to understand how to understand pieces of data, critical data elements, whatever you want to call them, and also aligning the definitions.
yeah. Cool, cool, cool. And then I guess on that respect, then what metrics can businesses use to measure like the stakeholder satisfaction with the outcomes of the like data transformation objectives?
I would think of two main ratios, for example. One is obviously penetration or usage of the data, And I always like to give examples. But Oracle, for example, is a company that is very much, among other things, they are very much focused on providing dashboards to their customers around the services that they provide. And one of the let's say challenges that they encounter sometimes is that the usage of the data is, or the usage of those dashboards that are fed by the data are sometimes not used or understood in the right way. So again, I guess the ratio of usage, versus the amount of people that should be using it, and the penetration are two key indicators to take into account. Additionally, I would also add, if there is any type of margin of error within the data sets, that's also something that people should look at to make sure, or to determine whether the data set is of high quality, or if there's areas for improvement.
Yeah, no, interesting. And then obviously, how do you address like stakeholders' concerns or resistance? Because the change is the challenge for most companies. How do you deal with like the resistance during like this data transformation process?
Obviously there is a nice way and there is a not so nice way. The nice way is to, try to understand how are people consuming and try to influence, if I may, with a soft approach. The not so nice way is to simply, eliminate legacy that has been identified as data, consumption, data storage, and just replace it with what the organization is hoping or expecting people to use from a data consumption and data management perspective. Obviously, the second approach is not necessarily the best one. It's the most effective one probably, but not the best one when it comes to culture. So I think it has to be a bit of a mixture. And as I have seen examples in the past where there is some type of a parallel period, parallel use of sources period, where you try to get people accustomed to the new ways while they wind down the old ways, if I may, so that it's not such a traumatic impact and change in the organization.
Is that like rolled out, like different phases rolled out? Is that
Yeah, of course. It really depends on what you're talking about, because for example, if you're talking about changes that impact, the regulatory environment of a company, for example,
yeah?
you're not so prone, or you may not be so open in a way to having a long period of parallel usage until you can actually wind down completely. It's more often than before, there are specific dates when things have to shut down, and then you have to move on to the new way,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when new regulation comes into play. But again, I guess there has to be a level of strategization between how to roll out change, and depending on what demands and requirements, and how to do it to make it less stressful for the organization.
Yeah, no, agree. And I speak to a lot of people. Obviously, getting involved with the training's key, making sure that's communicated,
Absolutely.
so everyone's on board, and I guess knows the outcome. Like, and those changes happening for a reason, and yeah, obviously positively is most likely on the occasion. But I guess you've got to educate people to see that point of view. I guess on that side, because obviously change brings people need to obviously upskill and maybe obviously lack on the data literacy side of things. So how important is data literacy among stakeholders to like drive the initiatives and implement the data literacy within a business?
I would say that there needs to be a bit of a mix between literacy and experience. I myself, I'm not an expert by reading. I've been more through the journey by doing, and I guess it also depends on how people learn. Some people, like I said, in my case, I learn more by doing, making mistakes, and then trying again, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But of course, there are plenty of organizations out there that have done tremendous efforts in putting together strategies on how to manage data transformation, and how to sail as smoothly as possible through the data transformation journey. So yeah, it never hurts to have a bit of a background, if I may, from a literacy perspective, to understand how to address things better for the organization that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But again, one thing is theory and the other thing is practice. So a mixture
Yeah.
of both, I guess, is the best way to go. In my case, I come with some experience, but I mean, I've recently started a new job in a completely different industry, and even though I do bring some level of experience, it has been an incredibly exciting learning journey coming
Hmm.
into a completely new industry and trying to make the link between what you know and what you need to do now given the change. So yeah, I would say a mixture
Yeah.
is always good.
So is that obviously learning on the job? Is that through like mentoring of sort of peers and things like that, where you've learned, or
Well,
just
yeah, but also, I mean, every company, every industry, every company has its intricacies, and it's always, important to understand to the lowest level of detail, if I may, how things work. Because,
hmm
one of my and I don't want to burn anyone here, but one of my main criticism to these big consulting firms is that they come with fantastic frameworks and theories and you know things that make absolute sense. But then when you try to apply them to the realities of whatever company they're working with, a lot of those theories break down because they're just not applicable to the environment where they are working. This is something that I mean I've seen in more than once occasions. So yeah, of course. I mean, you're mentoring and advice and connecting,
hmm
and it's always good to connect with people, having a coffee with them, with the people that have been in the company for a longest period of time, to understand better how things work and how can any of those, let's say, theoretical frameworks can be adapted to the reality of the organization. I mean, and this is applicable not only for data transformation, but for any type of change.
yeah, cool. Yeah, I guess sort of different stakeholders will bring different expectations, different views, different
Absolutely.
experiences. So that's where it's going to bring, I guess, yeah, interesting discussions, I guess. So, I mean, how can businesses balance the diverse expectation on stakeholders?
Well, that's a good question. How can they balance the expectations of the different stakeholders? I guess the best way and the most effective way is to simply start with why we're doing what we're doing in terms of
hmm
change, and try and assessing the level of understanding among the different stakeholders and their views. Because like I said, the perspective from a person from the finance department may be different from one of the human resources or whatever. So the more alignment, the more communication, the more awareness you or one creates around the culture of the company, around that change, the transformation, I guess the less the obstacles, the fewer the obstacles there that will
Mm,
be faced through that journey. If we're all in, regardless of if we are working in different areas of the business, if we understand the objective in the same way, we will be more likely to be successful
mm.
than not.
Yeah, I guess sticking to that clear goal is key because, like, I
Absolutely.
mean, look, obviously, it does the goalposts change so much, don't they? And
Yeah.
obviously, so I guess that's the challenges for businesses to keep it centralized to that end goal.
Yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, somebody must have already mentioned this to you in one of your podcasts. This guy Simon Sinek, who has become so famous lately. I mean, he has a famous that says that you always need to start with the why. Why exactly it is
Yeah,
that we're doing, not what we're doing or how are we doing it, but why. What exactly is the purpose? Because if you cannot clearly state the why and the implications of it, then probably you need
yeah,
to rethink whether you really want to do it or not.
yeah. No, definitely. And then to end on, how does aligning the data transformation with stakeholder engagement impact the organizational culture within a business? And then I guess what role does leadership have on playing on this and shaping the culture?
That's a great question. It really depends on how articulate the management is in outlining what the new strategy and what the culture should be. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, for example, back in my banking days, I once heard the CEO saying that we were no longer a financial services organization, but rather a technology organization. And
Mm-hmm.
he was actually spot on, because I mean, it was not so much about providing, let's say, the right financial products to the customers, but having the capacity or the ability to understand who the customer is based on, analytics and martech and digital
Yeah.
interactions, etc., so that you can actually understand who it is that you're talking to and provide him not with the right product, but with the right solution that fits his needs.
Mm.
So it's not a matter of just giving you, this product because it seems that it fits you, but based on what I understand are your needs, I think that this comprehensive solution would actually help you not just now, but for the time to come. So yeah, so if management can understand how to combine all of those elements to drive the organization towards that end goal, I'm sure that it will be easier for
Mm.
the rest of the organization to get on board on that journey and accompany the management in that journey.
Yeah, no, definitely. It does feel like, I guess, well, obviously transformation's been, yeah, always there, but since the pandemic, that does seem like it's been a big drive since, oh, especially on a digital aspect. I guess now you got remote workers, and then I guess all the new advancements within data analytics. It's, yeah, driving this forward for businesses.
Yeah, actually, there was a very interesting piece at the beginning of the pandemic. McKinsey was there. There was a podcast actually from McKinsey, and two of their top partners, they were talking about how companies were going to survive the pandemic with all the people being locked up in their houses.
Mm.
And one of them was saying something interesting. I mean, this recovery will look like in the shape of a K, where the companies that are, let's say, equipped to adapt quickly to this new digital world that we're living in will be going on the path that is pointing upwards, and all of those companies that take too long to react or don't have the means to
Mm.
adopt new digital technologies and new digital ways of doing things will actually be pointing, or we will be, cruising through the path that is pointing downwards. And as I
Yeah,
thought that was, and actually that promoted, I mean, not that podcast, but I mean that way of thinking promoted this massive adoption of all these, gadgets that we use today. I mean, our smartphones, and how we interact with companies
yeah,
digitally. And consumers are not going or not doing so many walk-ins into, shops, for example, as they're doing more buying online. And I mean, yeah, Amazon arrives to my doorstep pretty much every other day, whereas in the past, we used to go more to shops than
yeah.
before. So yeah, I mean, the pace of change that we've gone through over the past three years, it's been crazy. And it just looks so slow as opposed to what it's going to look in the future, with all of this change that we're going through.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting times ahead, and I think it's also, yeah, it's good. Good for business, obviously, to drive these efficiencies, productivity. Obviously, you want to optimize your costs as much as possible, really, don't you? So then you can invest in other areas, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, now more than ever, devil is in the detail, as they say. So, like I said, like started saying at the beginning of the podcast, I mean, you start with looking at what does your strategy look like. Now,
Yeah,
how are you equipped at the moment from an operations and technology perspective to service that strategy, and then the gaps translate into the transformation journey that you have to go through. But the data that feeds into all of those new processes, new transformation, is the key or the gold, or the
yeah,
pot of gold in making sure that success will come. Otherwise, you may have the best of processes, but if the data is just not there, yeah, there is the gasoline based car with the diesel
yeah,
being fed. It's not going to run
yeah.
very far.
No, I agree. And I mean, that's why there's big emphasis now, isn't there, on like data management for businesses. They're looking to how can they get more out of their data. That's, yeah, just been evident for all our, even for all our clients, it's just that's where they're driving. They want to get more because, like I say, data is the new oil, as they say.
Absolutely, it is. It is absolutely. It definitely is.
Brilliant. Cool. Well, thanks for being on the podcast. You shared some great insights, and yeah, it's been really interesting to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any more questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Roberto.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.